Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. The following story that you're going to be listening to, it was sent to me by one of our dear brothers. So this is the narration of that story that he sent to me, and the narration, it reads like this. Hello, my brother, how are you? I am a man who is aged 40 years old, and I am a white garment prophet. I want to tell you my own story, how I fell from grace, how I became a prophet, and eventually fell from grace. I was possessed by the spirit of my ancestors. This happened when I was only 14 years old. That was when the possession happened. But my parents, they used to tell me that even when I was still a little child, when they would beat me up, there were things that I used to do that showed them that there was something that was bigger that was possessing me. I used to get so sick because in our family it was known that the spirit of our ancestor, it was bound to return back when there was trouble in the family. So my relatives, they made me to be sick because they were fighting for the spirit of my ancestors. It then happened that there was this other time when there was this ceremony in Shona, we call it Kurova Guva, in which we will be bringing the spirit of a dead relative back into the family. So when it was known that the spirit of our great grandfather was now possessing my body, then we were at that function whereby we were trying to bring back the spirit of our auntie back into the family. So as people were busy singing, and when the mbira instrument was being played, it was then said that I started to cry, and the more that I cried, the more that my relatives saw that there was a bigger spirit that was possessing my body. But the spirit of our great grandfather, it then refused to talk, for it said that it was in a place where it could not communicate through me, because there were things that were supposed to be done first. And then the spirit of my grandfather, it just stopped talking. One of my father's elder brother, when he realized that the spirit that was possessing me, it was the spirit of our great grandfather. Since our great grandfather was said to be a well known, a powerful traditional healer, he then got jealous. He wanted his son to be a traditional healer, but the spirit had chosen, and the spirit had chosen that it was me who was supposed to be a traditional healer in the family. But my mother, anyway, did not want me as well to become a traditional healer, because my mother came from a family that used to go to the white garment churches. So she wanted me to be a prophet instead. So they started to speak about this issue. Then when I was at the age of 14, that was when I had a dream. In this dream, I saw myself, I was in a forest as I was being chased by my uncle. But then I saw an angel. This angel then told me to pray, because my grandfather's spirit was on its way, but it had been caught up along the way. So when I was told in the dream, in this vision that I had, it was then said that when one of your ancestors wants to return back to the land of the living, there are several stages that the spirit has to pass through. And if it happens that the bloodline has been cursed, or the bloodline has so many sins that have been committed in that bloodline, then it will be very difficult for that spirit of your ancestors to return back to the land of the living. That is why most of the people, they end up thinking that their ancestors do not know how to look after them, but it is just that your ancestors might want to return back to you, but they can't, because there were sins that were committed that needs to be resolved. So the spirit of my great grandfather wanted to return, but it had been caught up along the way by other principalities, and there were matters that needed to be solved. This is the reason as to why when your ancestor starts to speak, the first thing that they ask of it is that they want some traditional beer, or they will tell you that they are thirsty It is not because from the place where they are coming from, they were being burnt in hell, but it is just that they are coming from a place where they have to walk, they have to fight a lot of these principalities just to return back to the land of the living. For where the ancestors are staying, it is a very long place where they are staying. That is the reason as to why they are always saying that they thirst, and they want some beer to be. That is the reason as to why the moment that they start to speak, they will say that they are full of thirst because of the places where they would have been locked up. So in the family, in our family, there had been a murder that had taken place. So our bloodline, it was said that it needed to be cleansed so that my grandfather's spirit would be able to communicate through me. We then went to a church and I was assisted, and the Holy Spirit came on me. Then I started to speak in different tongues. I was then given a task to spend a month in the mountains fasting. So I was then guided by my father, but my father was told that he was not supposed to climb up that mountain with me. I had to do this on my own, and I was still a young boy. So I went up into the mountains where I lived like a wild animal. For this was going to be my punishment, and this was the cross that I had to carry on behalf of my entire family. For the sin had been committed by my uncle. One of my uncle had murdered a man. This happened when he was busy drinking beer with this man. Then they had an argument, and after they had an argument, my uncle then followed that man, and he eventually murdered him. Each and every night, just after sunset, a dark angel will suddenly appear from the northern side, and he would be holding a whip and a branch that will be made from a mpangara tree, a thorny tree. Then the angel will start to whip me until there will be blood coming out of my body. The angel kept on whipping me until I heard a voice one night that was saying, "It is done, for the sins of his forefathers are now forgiven. There is no need for you to keep on punishing him. There is no need for you to keep on punishing him. Return now." And I saw that the angel started to fly back into the heavens. On that same night, when the voice said, "It is done, the sins of his forefathers are now forgiven," that was when I saw two animals that came out of the earth. These two animals that I saw coming out of the earth, they had faces that looked like the faces of lions, but they had the bodies that looked like a man, but they walked on all four. These creatures that came out of the earth, they did not have any arms as human beings have. They only had legs. They had 4 legs, so they walked on all 4 of their legs, and they started to lick the blood that was coming out of my body from the beating that I had received from that angel. And on that same night, that was when I saw another angel, a very brilliant looking angel that flew down from the heavens. When he touched down on top of that mountain, he rested close to this other spring. So I went to where this angel was resting. Then out of that spring where I used to go and drink some water, I saw that there was a mermaid that came out, and they spoke. And then that angel was then given the permission to do whatever that he wanted to do with me by that mermaid, who then returned back into that stream. That angel then looked for me, and when he found me, that was when I saw that he was holding a Bible in his right arm. And that was when I saw that the angel was holding a Bible in his right hand, and the angel instructed me, and he told me that I was supposed to eat the pages of the Bible. And after I would have finished eating the pages of the Bible, that will be the day that I was going to be released from that mountain. For this mountain, it now became more like a prison to me. Only after eating the pages of the Bible, that is when I was going to be released so that I can do God's work. I was told to to eat all the pages of the Bible, and never again was I going to be required to read the Bible. For as I was eating the pages of the Bible, then everything that would be written on that page, it was going to be stored in my brain, in my memory. So even right now, there is no need for me to go around as I'll be busy preaching. I do not need to go around holding a Bible, for I have it in my own brain. Even at my church, there is no one whom even at my church, I don't want people. Even at my church, people, they do not even come with their Bibles, for they call me a human Bible. I know everything that is written in the Bible, and my understanding, it is very different from the understanding of other people who just joined Christianity and never received a vision. The visions that I saw taught me a lot of things. This was before I had fallen from grace, and after I had finished eating the pages of the Bible, that was when I was released. So at that time, what would happen was that whenever I would feel hungry, I would start to eat the pages of the Bible one by one until I finished it up, and I was told that I had to burn the cover of that Bible. And on that same day when I finished, that was when I was told that I needed to climb down the mountain. So I climbed down the mountain, and when I returned back home, my father and my mother, they celebrated, and there was a ceremony that was done, and I then became a prophet. At the age of 15, there were a lot of people that used to come at our house, and we used to be poor, but things had now changed. People would bring their cattle to my father if they had a relative that was sick, and my father would go and sell the cattle, and my father would go and sell off the cows. That is how my father started to make a lot of money, and things really changed. And this made my relatives to be very jealous of me, and the more that they got jealous, the more that they started to fight against me. Then there was this other particular trip when we came to Harare. Whilst we were in Harare, then we heard of this other rich family. They were being troubled by these Togoloshes, and I was told by my father that if we were going to help this family, then for the rest of our lives we were going to be rich. For my father had been promised a car, and this family, since they had several supermarkets, they had promised to give my father some of the shares in one of the supermarkets. So my father was really excited about this. That was when my father told me to help this family. Even though my father forced me to help this family, but I had the spirit of my great grandfather telling me that even though I was doing this, I will be doing it alone, because this family, it was supposed to confess, because there was a ritual murder that had taken place. So the family was supposed to find that girl that had been murdered during that ritual murder. But because of the love of money, I ended up doing it anyway. My father was given his car, and then we returned back to the village, and it was a really exciting time for our family. We kept on making a lot of money until they came this other woman. She came crying. At that time when she came, I was 17 years old. That was when I had my first child with a woman who was around about 37 years old. When she came, she had heard about this young, powerful prophet who was assisting a lot of people. So she came and she told me that she was married off to a man who had a lot of money, but the problem that she had faced in her marriage was that her husband's relatives had bewitched her and she could not conceive. So I started to assist her, and I was then told by this other spirit, which I thought was the spirit of my late great-grandfather, but it was just a demonic spirit that was communicating with me. It told me to go with this woman to the river. So I then told that woman that we were supposed to go to the river only me and her. We then went to the river, and the spirit told me to undress this woman, and she was supposed to take a bath whilst I was looking at her. And she then undressed herself, then she started to take a bath. And as she was busy taking a bath, I then started to lust after her, because this was the first time in my life seeing a woman fully undressed, and she kept on looking at me. And the more that she looked at me, the more that I lusted after her. And after she had finished bathing, as we were walking back to our compound, we had to pass through this other bush area. So she was walking in front of me, and as she was walking, I kept on looking at her curves, and then I ended up touching her, and I was really nervous at that time. But when I touched her, she responded, and she turned around and she kissed me back. And the more that we kissed, the more that I wanted to experience this thing of making love to a woman. Then we went on top of this other hill, then we found a perfect spot. Then we started to sleep together. We slept together until we felt that we were okay. Then we climbed down that hill and we returned back home. After we had returned back home, that voice then told me that I was supposed to keep her at our compound for at least 2 more weeks. So I told her that she was not supposed to return back to her husband. She said, "What is my husband going to say if I am going to spend more than 3 weeks in your village? He is going to divorce me." But the spirit had told me that all that I was supposed to do was to draw a circle and a 5-pointed star, and in the middle of that star, that is where I was supposed to write the name of her husband. So she had already given me the name of her husband. I did not tell her that this is what the spirit had told me to do. When everyone had fallen asleep, I then went outside where I draw that circle, and in the middle of the circle, I drew a 5-point. And in the middle of the circle, I drew a 5-pointed star, and I then wrote his name, and I was binding him inside that circle so that anything that I wanted him to do, he will end up doing it. So this woman, each and every night, since she was staying in another room alone, because my parents saw that she came from a very wealthy family, so they wanted to please her, and they did not want her to be mixed with some of the poor people that would come so that I can pray for her. She was being treated as if she was royalty. So late at night, I would then go into that room where she was sleeping alone. Then we would make love. I made love to that woman. By the time that she left our village, she was pregnant. And when she returned back to her husband, I had already binded her husband inside that point. I had already binded her husband inside that 5-pointed star that I had drew on the ground, and I told the husband that even if he was going to find out that the child that was growing inside his wife's womb was not his child, he was supposed to take care of that child for the rest of his life. And this he did, this man, until he passed away. My son, he is still alive. He is the one who is still running his late stepfather's businesses, because that man, he ended up dying without having any child. So for these sins that I committed, then I kept on ignoring the other voices that kept on telling me that the things that I had done were wrong. I was supposed to go and speak with that man, for I was supposed to release him. These were the voices of the Holy Spirit that kept on telling me that I was guilty because of the sins that I had committed. But I kept on listening to that seductive voice of that demon that had once seduced me to lust after that woman. So what I kept on doing was that any woman that would come to my church to be prayed for, when she would be looking for a child, wanting to conceive, I would sleep with that woman. As for now, the women that I slept with, I think they are 18 or As for now, the women that I slept with, the women that I impregnated, I think they are about 23 women that I can count that I knew that after they had left my shrine, they went back to their husbands and then they reported it back to me that they had fallen pregnant. So I have 23 children with these women that I slept with, including that woman who gave me my firstborn son. Yo, dear listeners, right there was a narration of a WhatsApp voice note that was sent to me by our dear brother. He was telling us his story. He was saying that from the moment that I saw some angels when I was in the mountains until the day that I fell from grace, even right now, he says that he still communicates with this demonic spirit. Strange things do happen in this world.